Welcome to Monday night's The Horse Barn Management Show. I don't know what it is. I cannot remember the name of it. Okay, the Horse Barn Management Show right here, put on by Pro Barn Management and myself, Sherry Grunska, live every Monday night at 6:30 here. I'm in my house at our farm. And welcome. Tonight we're going to talk about a fun subject. I wanted to talk about making changes in your business, and are you ready for the turnover, and are you ready financially for it when people get upset and leave? Emotionally, are you ready for it? Are you ready for all the changes? It's really a hot topic because I get lots of calls from barn owners and managers who have been in the business of boarding horses, and they're about in their third year and they're starting to get burnt out, and some of them even 10 years into it are calling me saying, okay, I'm ready to make changes. I don't care what the cost is. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Okay, first of all, I'm super excited. I got to tell you, June 12th and 13th of this 2021 coming up here, we're going to have a 2-day workshop here at our barn. We are going to be as transparent, I'm talking about we, my husband and I, about our business. We'll talk about every part of it, the financial part of it. We'll show you how we do our chores. We're not going to tell you this is the way you need to do it, but we're going to tell you why we do things the way we do them, some of the consequences of how we've done it, of how other barns do it. We are going to go over everything: equipment, expenses, herd management, contracts, boarding contracts, dealing with clients in all scenarios, what kind of barn you want to build, if you want to build, if you're going to buy an existing place. This is 2 days of so much talk about the whole thing. My plan is that when you leave, you are much better equipped for running this type of business. You're going to go home with a whole stack of paperwork and my book, A Step-by-Step Guide to Starting and Running a Successful Horseboarding Business. It's a huge book. A lot of the colleges are starting to use it in their equine programs, and I want you to be equipped so that you don't lose money. You have a lot of skin in the game. You don't want to lose money when you're boarding horses, and there are a lot of people out there that make kind of snickery jokes that you cannot make money boarding horses. My husband and I are proof that you can run this as a business, and you're not going to be a millionaire, but you can definitely, if your goal is to be at home and have a simpler life, you can do it. But sometimes it means making some strong choices and changes in your business, and you can do that, and getting your finances in order. So I've already had people start signing up. The cost is $350, and it includes lots of food. You'll be fed both days. My book, and it's so much material that you're going to be going home with that it's going to probably shock you, but in a good way. We're only taking 20 people. It's very limited. And so if you want to know more, go on probarnmanagement.com. You can sign up through there. You can email me. You can call me at 920-205-7518 with any questions you have. And I will walk you through it. My flyer is on Facebook and on probarnmanagement.com. Check it out. It'll tell you more about it. I guarantee you, you won't be disappointed. You'll be meeting with all these other people who are either building, running a barn already, are in the middle of it and having problems, barn managers, barn owners, and I guarantee you it's going to empower you and equip you to run this type of business. I want you to be smart financially and with how you run it. And so check it out. It's worth it, even if you're out of state. Every year I have people contact me and fly out from all over the place. It's definitely worth the weekend getaway to come to it. So I hope you check it out. Thank you. Okay, so the deal is here. You guys already know how it works. If you have questions, just write them on in, or you can, if you want to be anonymous, you can text me at 920-205-7518. Either way, ask your questions as we get into this, and I'll be as honest with you as I can. If I don't have an answer, I will let you know. I don't have an answer. I don't know how to answer that. Before we get started, I want to talk about something that was brought up last Monday. I want to clarify because when I was asked it, I wanted to have a better educated answer to it. And it was about someone had asked if we put our horse manure on our pastures for the horses. And I felt like I gave kind of a sloppy answer. I just felt like it wasn't a good answer. So, okay, I first of all, I contacted someone I know that grows hay professionally, and we kind of discussed it all because I also talked to my husband and I asked him why he doesn't put um, manure on our pastures. The thing is, in the wintertime here, we have snow. We could put it on there in the wintertime if we wanted to. But he doesn't like to put the manure on. If he would put just a light amount on, he doesn't like to put too much on the pastures when they're growing. He doesn't want to kill it, doesn't want to kill the pastures. Someone had typed in manure equals parasites, and there was a lot. We did a lot of talking. There's a lot of articles about it. You know, if you the situation is, if you have horse manure and you are on an excellent deworming program, then your parasites aren't going to be there, and once the manure is sitting, it's going to just break down. So the parasites are not just going to keep growing and coming. It just doesn't do that. Now, will you have some flies? Yes, you probably will have some flies. But in the summer, we would never put manure on our pastures. It would probably burn it, and it would create lots of weeds from the seeds. And you know, the fly factor might be a little bit in there, but parasites has never been an issue. And after talking to a professional hay supplier in the area, they also agreed that you have a really good deworming program. They didn't feel parasites would be the problem. If you have a bad deworming program, then yes, the parasite could be a problem there. But in your paddocks and everywhere else where the horses are going to the bathroom, you would also have a parasite problem there. It would be no different since we feed our horses on the ground. We don't feed them in feeders. So to kind of make, I guess for us, the reason we don't put the manure on the pastures has nothing to do with parasites. For us, it has everything to do with we don't want to hurt our pastures as far as putting in when it's growing or in the summer. In the winter time, I guess David, my husband, probably would a little bit now and then, but usually we put them on all the other fields. So I hope that's a better answer to what you're asking for. So I guess in some ways, I don't always agree that manure equals parasites. And even if you read lots of articles, you're going to find both views on it. But unless you have a parasite problem to begin with, you're not going to, it's going to break down, and I don't see that. So I hope that helps. If you have any comments or questions about that, join on in. You can disagree with me. And if you have anything, just let me know, Trish.
I will.
And okay, so we're going to start, and today's subject is about making changes in your boarding stable, big changes, little changes. We're going to talk about some facts and some myths for everything, every subject, because I think there's a lot of people that have this idea in their head, and I'm going to try to combat that and say, you know, I think that's a myth. I don't think that's reality, and I'll give you the reason why. The reason this topic is really important is because every single barn owner or manager I talk to who has gotten into boarding, and I was no different, gets into it, and at least starting in the first year, going into the third, you know, as they keep going, they realize they don't like how things are working. They're either losing money, the job is too hard, they just don't like the setup, and they start making changes. And when those changes come, all of a sudden they start getting pressure from the boarders if they are discontented with those changes. And it causes a lot of pressure on, do I make these changes? I'm going to lose boarders. How am I going to afford this? And it becomes a really vicious cycle. So I wanted to tell you my story real quick. For those who haven't heard it, and then I'm going to break it down and why when it's time to make those big changes, I'm going to tell you to make them, you know. So, okay, we built our stable back in 2005, And we built a 27 stall barn, and then we also had outdoor board. When we opened up, I really thought it was going to be easy. It all looked great on paper. We had done a business plan for the bank. I really thought that it was just going to roll. And the horses came. It was a shock, to say the least, in the first couple of months. In fact, the first week I started to cry. I panicked because I realized what we'd gotten ourselves into, and I was tied down all of a sudden. I can even remember we went to Golden Corral one night for dinner. My kids were really little. David and I went to Golden Corral, and I was panicking. What if someone calls? What if something happens? What if a horse gets loose? And the anxiety level went way up. Our barn hours were extremely long. We didn't close the barn until 10 at night, and we were getting up very early in the morning. The flip side of that is I was a lot younger. My husband was a lot younger. I had a lot of energy. I felt like I could tackle anything, and I thought I couldn't see beyond down the road. I just felt like it was going to be easier than what it was. So I was dealing with two emotions. We opened up, and right away in the second month, I realized we were losing money, which is not good. It's never good in a business. We were losing money right off the bat. There were things that we didn't like how we were doing as far as our feeding the horses. We had to change that. Cleaning the stalls. We just didn't know how to simplify it, and we were kind of muddling our way through it. There was no books out there about how to do it. This kind of stuff, problem solving. Herd management was crazy because I had all these horses come within 2 months, and I was trying to get to know their personalities. I was moving horses, and then I had included all these services on top of it that were part of the board, and that is pretty common for brand new boarding owners to do. So I included all these services, and I started getting pretty tired. And on top of it, I had the clients who were always contacting me and asking this, and can they do this? And I was saying yes, 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 yes. And to every yes I said, it was more work, work, work for David. And we were saying yes to things that I should have never said yes to, but I had not thought it through. And I thought, we could do that. That sounds good. We can do that. That sounds good. And it took me about 5 years to finally really get to the point where I started turning things around emotionally for me. And also, we had started making changes in like our second and third year, but it took me a lot longer to really take hold of it because I was really going through turnover of clients. I realized very quickly that every time I said no to something, someone got upset and people would leave. And I get it now. I always tell people, you have to not take it too personally. You have to understand that when you open a boarding stable, you're offering the world. You're trying to sell the stalls. You're trying to fill everything. Every horse is a dollar amount. I mean, you're looking at the income, the revenue coming in. You haven't quite figured out all your cost. And you're saying yes because you need to fill those stalls. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you say, you know what? I think our barn hours are too long. And you decide you want to lower your barn hours. And all of a sudden you realize people don't like the change. Or for us, that was a huge one. We changed our barn hours. We changed within a couple years into it, we changed our grain, which was a huge change. Grain was no longer included in our board. We were the only barn in the area to do that, and I had even been told by one of the equine nutritionists that worked in the area. She said, Sherry, are you sure you want to do that? It could really hurt your business, because no one else was doing it, and I wasn't going to include grain anymore because I was losing way too much money. And I said I have to do it for our finances because grain had skyrocketed so much. And I did it, and I only lost one person through that. So every year, through every season, I started making more and more changes, and it could have been adding new charges. taking away services. And I get why I had so much turnover in the beginning. It's because those first few years, because I had presented myself and this barn we had a certain way and all these things we were offering, and I realized I couldn't do it. I didn't have the manpower to do it. I couldn't hire employees because we were so tight financially, and I had to simplify, and I had to take a chance and see, okay, am I going to still be able to get boarders here? And at the end of the day, I realized many years into it, that not all those services people need anyways, but what they're looking for is quality care. So I chose to go a different route, and I took a gamble, and it was a big gamble. It was a huge financial risk we were doing because we were going against the grain of every other stable in the area. And now when I do barn consulting and I talk with people, I can feel and I can hear the fear they have, because they are scared that if they take away something that they've been offering, that they're going to lose boarders, and they're wondering if they're going to be able to afford it. So to me, I want to talk about some of this and the myths of it, because I hope at the end of this hour you'll feel empowered to make the changes you wanted to change. Maybe for 5 years you wanted to make some of these changes and you were nervous. I hope this will empower you. This show. Ask your questions as we're getting into it. And, I want to say, too, that when I say, are you ready to take back your barn and your finances and your life, I'm going to tell you right now, it's very emotional for me, because when I'm talking about your barn, your finances, and your life, it is all connected. Because if your business is struggling, your finances are struggling, it will affect your family life. Whether you're single, whether you're married, it affects it all. And you can't just walk away from it and be gone from it for a week, especially if you live on the same property. It's always here. So for me, it meant learning that the business doesn't come first, but my family comes first, and the business comes second. And I had to swap it, because at the beginning I put the business first, and I realized, no, what's important to me is my marriage to my husband, and it doesn't matter about anything else if our marriage isn't right, because we're so stressed. So it is important. It does affect your life. So I will talk a little bit about that as we get into it too. Do you have a question?
Okay. I have a 7-stall barn and 10 acres. Is it worth it to offer board for 3 to 4 stalls? Or would I be more likely to lose money?
Okay, say that again. Okay.
7-stall barn and 10 acres. Is it worth it to offer board for 3 to 4 of the stalls? Or would she most likely lose money?
Okay, so this is the important part. It doesn't matter if you have 3 or 4 stalls and you're going to board horses, or you have like our barn that's 27. The math behind it needs to be the same all the way through. So what I tell people before you set your board prices, because I'm going to jump around here a little bit. There are people that only board 3 or 4 horses, and they are still losing money. And why would you have people at your house and take care of their horses if you're paying them to board it? You're losing money. So the money part of it is really important. You may have another job, and the money, you might be thinking, well, I have another job, but you still should not be losing money. It may not be 3 or 4 stalls is not enough, obviously, for you to stay at home full time, but you should never lose money. So I tell people, no matter what they're going to do, whether they're going to board 2 horses, 4 horses, 10 horses, 27 like us in our big barn, you need to get the financial part of it right. And that means you're going to have a checklist of every expense that it's going to cost you for that. And it's through all the 4 seasons. So, for example, hay is obviously the one people think about the most. If you're going to be cleaning stalls, you need to have a good number of what you're going to charge, what the bedding is going to cost you. And are you going to do bulk bedding, light bedding, bagged bedding? You need to know if grain is included. And you need to figure out these numbers. And then those are the most common, and then the rest follow in that people forget about all the time. Your insurance, your care, custody, and control insurance, so that if something happens and a horse dies on your property because of maybe something that you thought you could have made a mistake, gave the wrong med, whatever, or a horse dies and the person gets very upset and they want to sue you for the cost of that horse, you want to make sure you have that insurance in place. Liability insurance you want to have in case someone gets hurt on your property. You want to have, your heating for if you have to heat your troughs or your automatic waters, your electric, you want to have all that figured into it. And that is just a little bit of it. You have, if you want to pay yourself a dollar amount, are you going to have employees? Are you going to have the care outside? You're going to need equipment. Manure to remove the manure wherever it is. You're going to have equipment to clean your paddocks, maintain your pastures. If you have that, you may not have that. Some places don't. So you have to figure out all that cost, and that is all in my book. I itemize all that because I want you to think about all that. Now, with 4 horses, the costs are going to be a lot less. But you're still, if you have to stack the hay, you have to buy the hay, and then you have to maybe stack it if you're using small bales. There's labor in that. If you're using a 4-wheeler or a tractor, if you have snow removal, if you have to figure out if you have water problem, things that break, maintenance, fuel for the equipment, all that should be figured in there. You should not be losing money no matter what. You should never be losing money. Can you be self-sufficient on 4 horses and stay at home and live forever? Probably no. You wouldn't make enough money on that, but you should not be losing money. It's not worth it if you're losing money. No one would do that normally. So that's the thing. Once you figure out your expenses, then you set the board price. What everybody tends to do, and what I did 15 years ago too, I did it just like everybody else, is I kind of went around and saw what everybody else was charging for board, and then I followed suit. And then what I even did worse is I lowered my price because I thought, oh, if I lower it, I'll get people to come here, because I was not thinking about all my expenses. And so I tell people, don't set your board price by what everybody else is doing. Set it by what your expenses are. The reality is, and this is the truth, you're going to have people that no matter what your board price is, they're going to think that's too expensive. And they want a cheaper place. They want everything for free. You don't want that type of boarder at your barn. Our board, I've had people, I had one person years ago, I was at the fair with my daughter, and there was a dad there talking. He boarded at a place that was less expensive, and he said right to me, goes, well, what's the difference between where I'm boarding and where you board, as far as money? Why would I want to spend more money? But he didn't have an indoor arena. There was a lot of other amenities he didn't have. He was looking strictly at the cost of, the horse, feeding the horse and stuff. He wasn't looking at all the amenities. And you're always going to have people that want to go on the cheap. If they're going to want to go on the cheap, that's not the boarder you want, because you should not lose money because they're too cheap to pay, and it shouldn't be coming out of your pocket ever. So, if you want to do 3 or 4 horses, you can do it. Yeah, go for it. But make sure you have your expenses figured out first. Any have a question? Okay.
I have a couple more.
Okay.
Is there anywhere to see samples of boarding barn budgets? I understand some costs are individual, but even an example of a middle-of-the-road situation. I think it would be educational for owners and boarders.
I don't know what other barns do. When I do my workshop, I do a budget. I will have a budget in there, and we talk a lot about money. In fact, we talk about money through the whole thing. I have, in my book, I talk about things like that. But if you want to see dollar amounts, you got to realize that wherever you live, it's going to be a little different. So for example, I worked with a barn in Georgia, and they have to pay for water. It's a huge place, so they have that extra expense. We live here and we have well water here, and we don't have to pay for water. So my expense, I don't have that. So you have to think of all those things. And then what you do is, what I always tell people, the best way to do it is you figure out your expense. So if you're going to have 4 horses, you need to figure out what you're going to feed those horses for a month, what it's going to cost you. And then you have to divide it out by the month and then by 12 months. So you get a ballpark price. And you have to remember that in the wintertime, especially if you live in a cold area, your hay, you're going to be feeding more hay. And in the summer, if your horses are on pasture, you might be feeding less. So it kind of balances out, but it depends on where you live. If you live in an area where you don't have snow or real cold and you don't have grass, then you might be feeding a more the same amount year round, kind of. You might fluctuate a little bit. But you also have to remember, another part of that is you are going to have different aged horses, different sizes. And you may have young horses that are going to need a lot more as they're growing, and then they hit in their mid years and they kind of taper off. And then you might get senior horses that don't eat a lot of hay. They might be switching to a mash if they have teeth problems. So I always tell people to estimate a little high and give yourself at least 2 years to figure out your finances and what it's going to cost you. And the big thing is, you should have a good idea after 2 years of what it's going to cost you, unless hay really skyrockets. It should kind of even out. So that's why I tell people to break it all down, and you have to figure out the number of horses you're going to have, and then you go through every single thing. One of the changes we made had to do with grain, because grain, if you want to talk about numbers, when we first did grain, it was like $9 a bag, and then all of a sudden it shot up. Well, now it's like $20 a bag, depending on what you're gonna, some seniors I pay for is $22 a bag. Some are strategy could be $17.99 a bag. That's a huge difference. I didn't have enough leeway in my board rate to absorb the cost if someone is feeding their horse $60 or $70 worth of grain a month. And if you're absorbing that, that's a lot of money to lose if you're going to offer grain included. The other part of it is, I realized I could control my board rates a lot better if I took the grain part of it out of there, because there were a lot of people who don't use my grain, or maybe their horse only had like a half a pound of grain, and I decided to give them the option of grain where they could bring their own or use my kind, and I just now charge them whatever it costs me. I don't make any money on the grain, but I'm not losing money, and my big thing wasn't to lose money. The grain gets delivered here every month. I feed them what they want. They get billed. It's super easy. It's very clean, and I'm not losing money. And that way I can keep my main board rate lower, because otherwise I'd have to raise my board up even higher. And for a lot of people that aren't using the grain, they're paying more board for something they don't even use. So I do it like that, and that's a really important thing. You have a question?
I have another question.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What's your policy in regards to beet pulp and hay cubes? Do you feed it even with the extra time it takes to soak feeding so many horses?
If you're online, are you doing like a lot of horses? Just kind of give me a little bit more detail. I have soaked hay in the past we've had a couple horses through the years that had they were senior horses. They needed the hay soaked. We also have had a couple horses that had allergies in the springtime, and their hay needed to be soaked a little bit. You can definitely charge extra for that service. Anything that you're going to do over and above what you normally offer for board can have a surcharge. And soaking beet pulp or soaking hay can be a lot of work. So yes, your time is worth money. It is labor, and yeah, it's a special service. You can charge for it, and you can set whatever price you want. Because I guarantee you, what happens is when you do some of these services, if you're doing them for free and they grow and those services become more complicated, there's a good chance that like a year into it, you're going to start getting kind of like I know the word, you're going to get sick of it. You're just going to get sick of it. It's a lot of time. If you're paying employees, you're paying employees more to do those services. So you go ahead and charge. Yes. So these are some of the things we're talking about. When I say you're making big changes, you're going to have turnover because it just happens. I want to say a couple things that I think are facts. But if you're going to make changes, the fact is you'll have someone get mad and leave. It's just part of human nature. We don't like changes, and sometimes people, they don't like it, and they say, well, they're going to move somewhere else, and that's okay. You have to be able to let people go, because new people will come in, and you'll be able to tell them this is how we do it, and then they can decide. And the horse industry is big, and there's a lot of people looking for boarding, so you have to do what's best for you. The other part of it is people are going to leave your stable for a lot of reasons, and usually it's not about money. It's usually about changes and other things going on. That is just part of it. So any new business, and I think this is true in the business world no matter what, but I'm talking about just the horse industry and boarding specifically. Anytime you start a new business in boarding horses, you jump into it and then you realize, oh, I don't like the way that works. I don't like the way that works. This is taking too long. You're going to have changes, and you need to be prepared, because people will say, oh my gosh, they're making a lot of changes. Some people might be willing to stay through those times until things even out, and some people will jump ship right away. And that's okay. You got to let them do it. You cannot let them control you. You have to take control of the business, and you have to say they're not happy with it. It's okay. So jump in if you have a question, Trish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, I have a totally different question.
Is it about changes?
It's about adjusting board prices.
Okay, go ahead. It's a good one.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Do you adjust board prices for a mini? He takes up a stall, of course, and the work is the same. He just eats less hay and no grain.
Ah, okay. We had a question like this similar last week about a pony. The way I look at stalls, and you can do it however you want, but a mini may eat less hay, but there's work. And the way the stalls work in our barn is, I don't care if it's a horse or a pony. Whatever animal is in that stall, they're going to pay a certain price. The board is the same, okay? And that's how I do it. Now, we did have in our outdoor board many years ago, we had a horse that was a little bit bigger than a mini, but pretty small. And I have a miniature horse, so he kind of hung out with my guy. And I did give them a reduced rate, but this pony, this mini was, well, it's not a mini, it was a pony. He was outside all the time, so the work wasn't a big deal because he didn't get grain, and I didn't have a stall to clean, and so he was just outside with my guy all the time. And I did give them a reduced rate for that. But for a stall, you still have to walk the little guy out. You have to walk him in. You have to clean the stall. You have to check the water. So I have not, when any kind of horse takes one of our stalls, no matter what the size, I don't personally give a reduced. And some people may think I'm, that's cheap of me to do that. They can think what they want. I just have to run it that way. And we have 2 ponies in our barn right now. They're bigger ponies, but they eat less, a little less. And we also have huge horses. We have a couple thoroughbreds, a warm blood, and they eat more hay, more warm blood, and they eat a lot more hay. And I don't charge them extra. I charge the same amount no matter what the hay is. So I hope that answers your question on that. Okay, good. Okay, so the big thing with the board rate is people will leave. The board rate is always a change when you're raising the board. But we're going to talk about the board rate. I want to talk about that a little bit later because I want to talk about all the things that help make up the board rate and the changes, because it all ends up reflecting your board rate. And if you do it the right way, it should balance out. So when we opened up, we made a lot of changes, and I'll tell you the first change we made right off the bat was the barn hours. And it's interesting because I did have someone email me today about boarding at her stable, and she said, she was very nice, and she said, but I hear your barn hours, you're closed till 8 p.m. You close at 8 p.m. During it's kind of like the school calendar from September to May, we're closed at 8 p.m. And then during the summer, we're open till 9. She goes, well, I don't know if that'll work for me. I need to be at a barn that's, open later because I work later. So I just sent her back a nice email and I said that probably won't work, for us because we are closed at 8 p.m. And so if your barn hours are later and you're going to lower them down because sometimes you're exhausted and there's people at your barn later and that's something that's on your heart, that bothered us. We needed to lower ours down from 10 o'clock to 8. It may not bother you at all, but if you do that, it could affect your boarding where you have some people who feel they can't do it because of work. Or they might feel that, I'm paying all this money, I should be able to come out to the barn at 11 at night. And you just have to be prepared for that. That's a change people go through. And it's okay to say, you know what, we have to do this for our family first. And if they leave, they leave. You'll get new people. And if they like your place, they'll stay and they'll work around the barn hours. So, anything? Okay. Another thing that I talked briefly on was grain. When we changed our grain and we stopped including it, that was a huge change. And I had lots of people tell me we were going to lose lots of boarders. And we only lost one person when we did that. But it was interesting because as people came for barn tours, I did have a lot of people say, well, I don't get it. All the barns around here include grain. Well, the thing is, there's two parts to this. One thing, as a horse owner, I feel horse owners should be very aware of what a barn is feeding for the barn grain. It might work out perfect for your horse, but not every grain is the right grain for your horse, depending on what age, if they have metabolic issues, if they have other issues, maybe they're heavy, they don't need grain. Whatever it is, I feel that if you're going to just throw out a general grain for all the horses, a lot of people like that. It's kind of like a little perk. It sounds really nice, but in reality, it might not be the best thing for the horse. The other part of it is down the road, they may say, well, I'm paying all this, expensive board, and my horse doesn't even use the grain. Very few horses are going to use the optimal amount of grain that you offer. So I just felt that for me, it's a much better feeding program to have. We offer 3 different types of grain, and then I let people bring their own grain. It's definitely much more specific to the horse's needs. It's not a one-size grain fits all for all the horses. I think it makes better sense for the horse's health. So for me, it was an overall plus. So if someone is worried about not offering grain because they're worried about losing boarders, you could lose boarders, but you'll get new people in because you're going to be restructuring your barn and you're going to have a much better base as far as nutrition for the horses. And overall, you're going to look a lot, I think, it's going to look more, I don't even know what the word I would say. It's going to be more thought out as far as what these horses need. When you're talking about hay, Sometimes you'll have, I'll go to barns and they're feeding. I guess this is one of the changes that happens in barns is when they start off, they're thinking they're going to feed alfalfa, they're going to feed a grass hay, they're going to feed a mix. They're going to feed all these different types of hays and keep track of what horse is eating what, and they're going to, and it sounds perfect when you talk about it, but the problem is it's very hard to do that if the horses are in herds when they're outside eating. If you're going to do that, that means you have to leave them in the stalls in the morning, which means they go out later, which means the stalls are dirtier. You're going to be doing a lot more cleaning, which then adds to the expense of bedding. The other part of it is the storage. Most people don't have enough storage to keep track of all those hays. And if you are, feeding 2 flakes of alfalfa and 1 flake grass and this and that, unless you've got the manpower, the storage place, and, you can charge accordingly, there's a good chance you might be losing money on that. And it gets complicated. And honestly, I have been to some fabulous barns and they feed a nice grass alfalfa mix and it's just a nice hay, and even maybe even grassier in some parts, and the horses do beautifully. So I tell people to simplify when they get that complicated. Now did work with a barn where they did simplify and they had a boarder that got upset and chose to leave, and I said, let them, you have to let them go, because the work she was putting in wasn't even worth the money of keeping track of all this hay and the storage and where are you going to put it all, because who has that kind of storage. So she did lose someone, but someone new came. So if you are making it too complicated, it's okay to say, you know what, we're going to feed one type of hay. For us, we'll get our first cutting, which is grassier, and then the second cutting usually always has more alfalfa in it. And then we store it, and my husband will put the hay, because we have first cutting and second cutting, sometimes he'll feed the grassier hay outside and the second cutting inside. But these are big 900-pound bales. It's easy to distinguish where the hay is. It's not thousands of little bales where you've got 1,500 of this and this and this, and it's much easier to store it. And we do that just because of the cuttings. It's not that we're picking out that type of hay. It's just that the alfalfa gets thicker as the second and third cutting comes. And it works out really nice. So we will do that, and you can do that, but I don't specifically feed a certain type of hay. People don't get to ask for the alfalfa. They feed whatever we're feeding, and that's the big difference, is they don't get to say, well, I want my horse to have alfalfa morning and night. They get what we do, and our horses look great. They're healthy. Their weight is good. They weather the winter really well, and I don't have a problem with it. So it's something we're checking into, because that is your biggest labor and your biggest cost. Okay. Another change that happens in a boarding stable, and this happens usually once you get into it and you realize you're losing money, is the bedding. And I'll tell you right now, if you can do it, if there's any way possible to do storage and you have access to bulk bedding, do that. It's going to save you a lot of money and a lot of back-breaking work. When we first opened, we ordered 1,000 bags of bedding because I wasn't thinking bulk at the time. And we ordered those 1,000 bags and we never ordered anymore. It was awful. First of all, to have to carry down 27 bags every day is crazy, and open them up, and then you got to get rid of the plastic and all that. A lot of people do it because they don't have the storage, so they have to do bags, but I feel if you can go bulk, it's going to save you a lot of money. Now, this is where people make changes. In fact, I was just working with a barn who they bedded their stalls really heavy, and they decided that the stalls didn't need to be bedded any heavier and they wanted to go lighter. You're going to talk to 10 people and they're all going to have different views on bedding. Some people will say, well, the horse has to be bedded in really heavy bedding, and the horse has, someone else will say, no, they don't. It's no different. If you have rubber mats and screenings and rubber mats, they'll do just fine with light bedding. The fact is, we've been doing this 15 years, and we've only had maybe 3 or 4 cases where maybe a horse had hock sores, and we had to bed heavier for that horse so that they weren't getting hock sores, and we charged extra for bedding. We have not had to add extra bedding for other horses unless it was a medical situation, like if maybe a horse got laminitis and we had to bed heavy, and then again we would charge the owner of the horse for that. Other than that, we bed pretty light, and I tell people that. That was something we started off right at the beginning with. We bedded light, and I'll be honest with you, there were people that probably didn't board at our barn because they wanted a barn that bedded really heavy, and that's good because we don't do that. But when a barn owner decides to cut back on the bedding, and it happens, I hear it all the time. They will have boarders that are upset at them because their horses aren't going to be in this foot of bedding anymore. And I just tell people, you have to do what's right for you. You can't lose money on the bedding. It's a lot of labor, it's a lot of work, and the horses really don't need it. So you have to have some kind of reality there. And unless you want to raise your board to $1,000 a month, and then you're going to lose those boarders anyways because they can't afford that. So I personally, if you want to bed lighter and you have the right footing in the stall, the horses do okay. They do just fine, and we have not had a problem with it. And you have a question?
Doesn't light bedding make a barn smell like urine?
No. That's a really good question. So we bed really light, and we have screenings, rubber mats, and then bedding. And because the bedding isn't so heavy, we clean in the morning, and all that stuff is gone, and the new bedding is in, and it's easy to clean. You get everything out. When you have a barn that has your bedding so heavy, there's a lot of times that wet stuff way underneath is just sitting there. And that's one thing about our barn. We have not had anyone say that you have a urine smell, and it's a very clean smell in the winter. When the horses are in for periods of time when the weather's bad in the winter and they've been peeing a lot, yeah, you could you'll smell a little bit of urine, but that's because they've been in all day, and we clean early in the morning. And that's the other thing too. It depends, if you're not cleaning till the afternoon, you're going to have all that stuff just sitting there. Where we clean, we start at like 7 in the morning and we're done by like 9:30 with cleaning the stalls. So we're done. The stalls are completely clean, and that's 6 days a week, and then on Sundays we don't clean. So we have not had a problem with that. If you have a barn where the horses are in all the time, and especially a barn that's heated in the wintertime, you're going to have a urine smell because there's no air flowing through there. But our barn is open. It's not a heated barn, and we don't have a low ceiling, and it just doesn't smell bad. It smells like horses, but not bad. It's a good horse smell, I guess is how I'd put it. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. One of the things that I think people, I had talked to a couple in another state. I worked with them about 2 months ago, and they'd been at their barn. They'd been working there for about 12 years, and they had it. They were just ready to make changes no matter what it cost them. They knew they had to make changes, so I helped them, and we talked a lot, and we worked through things. One of the biggest changes they went from having horses in stalls and individual runs to getting the horses into these huge paddocks where they were in herds. It was a lot easier to clean the stalls with the horses in individual runs. There wasn't a lot of room for the horses to move. They had a lot more to clean every day, and they were ready to change how they did that. And they were going to go from that system to having herds. And the process, we did a lot of talking, wrote up letters, how this was going to be presented to the boarders, because they knew that some of the boarders would be upset with that. But when you have 35 horses and they're all in individual runs, you have to make sure they all have water. It's a lot more of everything instead of having them in herds where you're dealing a lot less with water, because you have maybe 5 horses in a herd or 4 horses in a herd instead of every single one. So they were completely revamping how they did that, and they did contact me, and I had warned them ahead of time. I said, I'll help you, but I'm going to let you know you're going to have some turnover, probably because a lot of these people had been there since the beginning of when they bought this place, which was like, I think must have been like 12 years ago. And I said, you're going to have turnover, and are you ready for that? And they were ready. Were ready financially to take the hit, because they knew it was time. They were getting older. They needed to change and have it be work better for them, and they were ready for it. The other thing they were going to do is have it where they had 1 day off a week. And it's crazy to think that we almost have to beg to have 1 day off a week, but it's hard when you're working with these animals because they have to be fed every single day. So they were going to make it where they had 1 day off a week, and people were, they were even going to the point where maybe people couldn't come out to the barn that day, and it would be a day of taking care of chores, but not talking to people, just doing their own thing. They modified that a little bit, but it was some major changes they had to do for them as a couple working together, and the burnout of it all. And finally I got an email from the gentleman, and he said it wasn't as bad as what they thought. Not as many people left as what they thought. It was going much better than what they thought. And actually, the people who went into herds, their horses went into herds. The other people that maybe said they wanted private turnout, now more people were asking to put their horses in herds, and the people that their horses were in herds were really happy. They liked it better. It was much more positive because the horses were playing. They were, hanging out together the way horses were meant to be, and it just seemed like it was flowing. They do have some people on private turnout, but it was that part of it was moving positively. And I haven't heard from him back since, but he was happy that people were even liking the idea of herds. And that's a big change when you have all these horses in individual private runs, and now you're grouping them because everyone's worried that the horses are going to get hurt. And he said it was going really good. So he didn't have as many people take over or leave, I guess I should say, is what they thought. And they did create where they have 1 day a week where they have a day off, and that was much needed for them. And it was like, more power to them. You got to do it. You got to do it for yourself. So that was a huge one. So when you're changing your herds, it's kind of it's important. Any questions? Okay. Some of the things that okay, this is a huge one I wanted to talk about, and I don't even know what time it is, Trish. What time?
It's 7:23.
No way.
I know.
I haven't even gone through my list. Sorry, I've been rambling. I hope I'm helping you guys. Okay, we have like 8 minutes. If you got a question, go ahead and ask it. I'm going to go through some of these changes real quick, barn rules. I'm going to tell you right now, when you first open a business or when you're first starting off, it's going to be hard to have barn rules. You're going to feel like, oh, I don't want to be too strict. Oh, I don't want to micromanage people. Blah, 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 blah. Do it. Have barn rules. Get some consistency in how things are run. I'm telling you, I didn't have any barn rules, and then I realized I had chaos. I started making my barn rules. I have had to modify them every couple years. They grow, and then all of a sudden I start taking some down because I don't need them anymore. It's just part of having a business. If someone doesn't like one of your new rules and they're going to get upset, let them go. You know, you got to have barn rules for safety, common sense barn rules. If you don't want them walking on your grass when it's springtime and you don't want hoof marks all over, it's okay to say, keep off the grass right now. If you don't want them riding, if you want a barn rule where they have to wear a helmet no matter where the age is, have that rule. If you um, don't want them feeding horses in the herds because it's too dangerous to go out there with one apple and have 5 horses come around, have that rule. It's about safety. It's basically about safety more than anything. It's just about safety. But you can have any kind of rules you want, and you're going to change rules, and sometimes people are going to get kind of mad and they're going to not like it and leave, and that's okay. New people will come, they'll be happy with your rules, they'll like that you are consistent in how you do things, and that's what's super important. So barn rules was, I think, a big one. Another one we're going to talk about real quick that is huge is your special services. If you're anything like me, we said yes to everything, blanketing, blah, 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 all these stuff. And you realize really quick, it's very time consuming, especially blanketing, that's probably top on the list. It's very time consuming. If you're paying employees, you're going to be spending even more money switching blankets AM and PM. Midday, if you're having to switch blankets midday. I changed a lot of my services. I do an a la carte thing now. I don't know if there's a better word to use it. It's a la carte. It's all individual. People get a price sheet if they want me to do blanketing. I have the price on what it costs individually or per month. The same with holding fee for vet or farrier. I don't offer that for free anymore. When I started making all those changes, of course there were people that maybe got upset. Best thing I ever did for our business. I kind of got my life back. When you charge for things, you'll find out a lot of times people will use those services less, but when they do, you make money. And if they don't use you, then you don't have to do the work. And it gives you some of your life back. I've seen a lot of barn managers, or talked to a lot, they're burning themselves out because they're holding horses for the farrier all the time, and it's all included in the board. It sounds great, except it's very time consuming, and then you have all this other stuff to do, and you know what, the boarders like it, but it burns out the barn managers almost every time. So if you're going to make some changes, those are healthy changes to make. You can charge for them, and if you have some people leave, it's okay. I'm not trying to take light of people leaving. I just realized after doing this for 15 years, you can't please everybody. Once you get a barn that is put together the way you want it to go, and you have your services, you have how you do chores, you have how you feed, and you have it all laid out in a very consistent fashion, you're going to not have as much turnover, and you're going to have people that stay for years. You're going to realize you're going to value what you do as a business owner, as a business manager, and you're going to feel that what you do is worth a lot in money. And I just feel that as you do it longer, instead of becoming bitter because you're burned out, I'd rather have you take control of your business and not be bitter and not be burned out, but instead learn to love your job again. And it means that you're going to grow. You're going to grow in a lot of ways that is, sometimes some of the people may not like it. And again, you may have great boarders, but if they are not happy, then let them go. They'll go somewhere else, and you'll have boarders that are really happy and will stay for years. We've had boarders for years, and once in a while someone will leave because something fits them better over here. And you have to remember, in business, it's not personal at all. It's business. So you're going to want to feel like your feelings are hurt because they went to another stable, and you have to just let it go. And you have to say, it's business. I have to run the barn the best that I see, and these people have stayed for years, and they're happy, and they've weathered with me through the ups and downs and the changes. And you can't please everybody, so the best thing you can do for yourself is to do what's best for you. emotionally and financially, and that's important. Do I have any more time, Trish?
It is 7:30. We do have one more. I don't know if it's a question, but it is interesting.
Okay, go ahead and read it, and then because I wanted to talk about trainers real quick, but I don't know if I'll have time because trainers is huge in changes with a barn. It's big when a barn owner makes a change with trainers. But ask me this question, and I hope we have time.
Okay. I had a boarder show up unannounced, I'm assuming is what that meant, yesterday on Easter, and have a buyer come look at their horse. I had no idea the horse was even up for sale. The people ended up buying her and trailered her out of there yesterday. Now the boarder's dad is requesting a refund because the horse was only here 4 days this month. My contract states a 30-day notice and B, no refunds. How do I explain that to them? That it's not happening without causing drama.
Happy Easter, right? You know what? Honestly, if you have a boarding contract, it's right there. You got it. You have a boarding contract. They can go try to claim money. I mean, I doubt they're going to even try because why? You know, if you have a boarding contract and the people came, took the horse, and you have a 30-day, then there's nothing to explain. I don't know how to say this. If they get ugly with you or get kind of sharp, walk away and say, I don't have time for this. This is a business. You signed a boarding contract. You're going to have to be firm and be strong about it, and don't cry. Do not cry in front of them. In the house, you can go ahead and do it, but just be strong and firm and say, you signed a boarding contract. You don't get a refund. And they didn't even tell you. I mean, which is kind of, I think, disrespectful. I think that, and on Easter, on top of it, it's a holiday. I guess that shows that they have they don't feel, they're not giving you any respect, because I just can't imagine that would be rude to do. They've taken the horse and they don't get a refund. That's how I look at it, and I'm not an attorney. Okay, so I'm not an attorney, but I can guarantee you if you go talk to an attorney and you have a contract that says that, that they have to give a 30-day notice. That is a 30-day notice. I have given people a 30-day notice, and it maybe was on the 1st or 2nd, and they've left by the 5th. They left. They don't get any money back, and they have left. So I hope that answers your question. If it goes into any more problems like that, I hope you have an attorney you can talk to. But I can't imagine they're gonna argue with you on that if they have the contract and you have that in your contract. So, is there any more on that? Okay, I hope that answers your question on that. The other thing I'm going to make super quick. It's a fact or myth. Is trainers at your barn, when you're making a change in trainers, I've had to ask a couple trainers to leave throughout the years. That's a huge change because people are using them, and when they can't be at your property anymore, you are going to probably have turnover. I've had turnover. The fact is you're going to have turnover. If they leave, people will probably leave with them. I was willing to do that because of needed to fix a situation. The myth that a trainer will make or break your business is a myth. A trainer is not going to decide if your business is successful or not. You will decide if your business is successful. Blah. Do not let a trainer tell you that the reason you have so many boarders is because of them. You don't need that kind of attitude there. Do not let a trainer tell you that if they leave, you will go out of business. That is not true. Could you have turnover? Yes, I lost 17 horses when we had a trainer leave our barn. And you know what? God was good. We were able to fill every stall. And it was kind of a breath of fresh air. It was kind of a time of regrowth and changing. And sometimes those are blessings in disguise. Don't let a trainer run your business, and don't let them tell you you can't survive without them. So the fact is, if you do ask a trainer to leave, you'll probably lose someone, maybe a few people. I hope you don't ever go through what we did, but you'll be okay. and there are other trainers out there, great trainers, looking for a nice barn to work out of. So don't let them hold you over that. You're going to change. We're kind of right at the end, but I want to tell you this real quick. You're going to change and grow through your business. If you're anything like me, you're going to start out wanting to please. And I still want to please, but I know how to say no now. I have a good balance where if I can say yes, I'll gladly say yes. But the only way you really know how you can say yes to things is by experience and knowing what works at your stable. So you may have to go through some changes and trying something and realizing, oh, that doesn't work, or I don't want to do it that way. And then you have to come back and say no. And that's when people tend to get upset, is because you told them yes and then you switch to no. You're going to go through some of that. Don't be hard on yourself. It's a learning thing. We've all gone through it. I've definitely gone through it. It's just part of running a business. It's part of anything. And just don't beat yourself up. Learn from it, grow, become stronger, and learn from your mistakes. Ask for help from mentors, people who have been doing it longer, that will give you positive input and will be an encouragement to you for those days when the days just kind of went to pot. It just kind of fell apart. And just remember that it will get good again. And changes in all part of your boarding business sometimes are essential to grow and to make your business financially sound. So I hope it was a quick hour. I can't even believe it blew by. But I want to wish you the very best in your boarding business. And I hope, if you're interested, check out our 2-day barn management workshop. I guarantee it'll open your eyes. It'll be fun. You're going to meet all kinds of nice people. And it's definitely worth the money, even if you're traveling here from farther away. And we've had people come from Pennsylvania and all over the place, Tennessee, to come to the workshop. So definitely check it out. I want to wish you a blessed week. And if you have any questions about what we talked about, feel free to put them out there or email me. Check out probarnmanagement.com, and you can watch these or listen to them anytime. And we want to wish you a wonderful week, and God bless you. Thank you.